All right. Hi again, everybody. Sayre at Nova Motorcycles, of course. Today, we're going to talk about winter storage. We have in front of us a beautiful specimen, 1985 Kawasaki GPz 900, also known as the Top Gun bike for all you Mavericks out there. It's a beautiful machine. We've gotten to work on it a few times, which means we've gotten to ride it a few times. And man, it's a freight train, fast as hell. And this one is really beautiful. Anyway, so winter storage, it's for some reason 70 degrees in western Massachusetts today in November 3rd, I believe. Not really natural, but it's beautiful. So you might not be thinking about parking your bike just yet, but it's coming. The time to, at least in the Northeast when the snow hits. So everybody always asks us what things are most important when you're trying to park your bike for the winter. Everybody has different things they do. Some of them work, some of them are really dumb. So, you know, there's different ways to do it. There's no one right way, but in our opinion, the most important thing is to stabilize the fuel in your carbs or get it gone, and to take care of your battery. Other things, some people drain their tanks out, some people fill their tanks up. All that stuff is, you know, there's various reasons to do one or the other. If you're parking your bike for, 5 years, it's one thing. If you're parking your bike for 3-4 months until the snow's gone, that's another thing. So the basic stuff is, we'll talk about this for basic winter storage, not long term. The amount of fuel in the tank, it does not hurt to have a full tank. It definitely stops it from rusting. But it's not critical, especially if you have a nicer tank. If you have an old tank that's prone to rust, yeah, definitely fill it up. It will help. When it comes to your carbs, a lot of people, we can't tell you how many people come to us and say, I don't know how my carbs are dirty. I put stabilizer in it, in the fuel. And we say, well, did you run it after you did that? And they say, no, why do I have to do that? Because if you just put it in your gas tank, it's not going to get to the carburetors unless you actually run it. So if you're going to run stabilizer, put it in the tank, take it for a ride, just a few miles, enough to empty out what's in the bowls and to fill it up again with the stabilized fuel. And then, you should be good for a little while. Stabilizer doesn't make it perfect. It just slows down the rate that the fuel is going to evaporate. Now, when it comes to what to use as a stabilizer, the Stable brand is pretty good. They make stuff that is ethanol specific. I would recommend that. Something like Seafoam or Marvel Mystery Oil or Lucas Injector Cleaner, all that stuff is not going to help you. It's not meant to stabilize the fuel. That stuff is all solvents. That's once you have dirty carbs, then you can put that in there and hopefully clean it out and save yourself from a carb job, save you from seeing us. So if you're going to run stabilizer, run it into the carbs and then you can leave it. You'll probably be okay. But if you really want to be sure, it's important to drain your carburetors, and that's what we do. For winter storage on our bikes, we top up the fuel tanks and we drain the carbs. Now, on a 4-cylinder, you got 4 carbs. So each of these little plugs here is a drain plug. Make sure your fuel is off. Drain it out into a cup or a rag, something to stop it from going all over your pretty motor. If you have a fuel-injected bike, you get to skip this part of the test because you don't need to do any of this. You just leave it alone. But yeah, every carb is a little bit different on how to drain it, but basically turn your fuel off, make sure the float bowl is empty of fuel by draining it, and then leave it for the season. When you come back, it'll be good. So that's fuel. Battery is really the second important part. If you have heated storage, all you have to do is keep it on a tender if you have a battery tender. If you don't have a battery tender, you can start the bike every so often. That'll be good. I mean, obviously, that's going to be hard to do if you've drained all the fuel out of your carbs, but keeping the battery exercised is what's key. A battery tender basically goes through and artificially exercises it, lets it drain some, fill some, drain some, fill some electricity, which keeps it active, stops it from sulfating. If you don't have a battery tender, starting it is good. If you don't have any of that, keeping it in a warm place is the best thing you can do. They don't like to freeze. If you leave a battery outside over the wintertime, untouched, frozen, it's not going to be very happy come spring. And if you bought a new battery this year, next year it probably won't be so new anymore.
Indoor garage?
Indoor garage, yeah. Anything above freezing is good enough to keep it happy. And if you have a lithium-ion battery, ignore all that. Do not put a lithium-ion battery on a tender. It's a completely different technology. If you have a lithium-ion battery, it came with instructions that tell you what to do. follow those. For the most part, they can be left alone. They're pretty robust as far as long-term storage. They have a very slow discharge rate. So I wouldn't worry too much about those. And then, so then we come to the fun part of storage, especially in New England, and that's mice and other critters. We pull so many mice nests out of motorcycles come springtime. Now, typically we see them on bikes that have been stored for multiple years where mice really have a chance to move in and they can smell that other mice have been there before and that kind of thing. But mice are really more than just a nuisance. They're pretty dangerous. They'll eat your wires. They'll get into your airbox and get sucked into your motor if you don't know they're there. We've had to rebuild whole motors because a mouse got in there and part of its nest gets sucked into the motor and destroys things. So they're no joke. People do all sorts of things. We know a good friend of ours who winters his bike on a lift, the lift surrounded by mouse traps, and then the bike stuffed with things like mint tea and mothballs to keep the mice away. So far, so good. He's had good luck, so maybe it all works. The very least, trying to cover all the orifices like your airbox intakes and your exhaust pipes. They really want to crawl into places where they think is safe and can make a nest. So covering that stuff up is good. At least being aware that I can be there. So if you see any signs, you can take some steps for it. That's also a good idea because they can ruin a motorcycle, these little guys. And customers spend a lot of money with us fixing those things, and it's no fun. So basically, if you set your bike up right for the winter, you can get it on the road again with no money and very little time. You just, add some fuel or turn your fuel back on. Hopefully your battery's charged because you've been tending it, and just fire it up and go, ideally. Now, last thing I'm going to say, one thing that people always forget is your tires are going to lose pressure over winter. So you don't just fire it up and go. You check your tire pressure, fire it up and go, because you're going to have low pressure when you get on it if you don't. We tell everybody, we ourselves, checking your tire pressure should be a regular part of your riding experience, every couple of weeks at the very least, because low tire pressure is not very safe. It'll wear out your tires. Your ride quality is not so good. Just in general, you want to stay on top of it anyway, but particularly in the spring, we see so many people bring us their bikes with 15 pounds of pressure in the tire when it should be 32, and that's just no good. Yeah, I think that's about it. The last thing I will say is if you ride your bike all winter, you don't have to winterize it. So I always have at least one bike that I just start every few months because I'm about to go ride it in my head at least. Whether I do or not, we'll see. But I do start it at least once a month. And that's another safe way to do it. Just be diligent, go out and start your bike, keep things moving through it. If the fuel is moving, it doesn't have a chance to evaporate, and that works too. So that's it. Oh yeah, winter storage. If you do not have a place to keep your bike, I'm going to give a plug to our very own Bailey here. We used to do winter storage here. We're not doing it this season. We just don't have the space for it as a small shop. But our mechanic Bailey, who you all know and love, her family has a lot of space, and they're doing winter storage this year. So if you do need a place to keep your bike, hit us up. We can connect you guys, and they have a ton of room, heated, and that's a nice place to keep your bike. All right. As usual, please like and subscribe, and thanks again.
You work here?